Bethelene Hart, founder of Parenting by Hart, is an expert child and family educator with over 30 years of experience, an award-winning speaker and best-selling author of children's books that promote emotional literacy. Her passion is guiding, supporting, and empowering parents, caregivers, and children. And her motto is Confident Parents, Confident Children. Her books weave her honest and humorous experiences to educate and validate parents and caregivers. Bethelene, welcome.
Thank you.
So I want to open with the moment or the experience that first made you realize that this story needed to exist. So Ben's big feelings in a little body.
I was really fortunate because when I became a mom, I thought I had all the skills. And Ben was my firstborn, and he was my first teacher on the parenting journey. And when he was around 3, I just I just found him a handful, and I kind of ran out of things in my toolkit. I had a 10-day-old baby at that point, and I went to my first parenting class. 10-day-old baby in my arms, 3-year-old at home. Kind of joked, either the 3-year-old moves out or I move out. And it just gave me a language and skills. It was the Alfred Adler Institute, so the philosophy was the Adlerian philosophy, and it gave me a foundation and a language. And I'd read a quote that said, "For the parent, it'll always feel like learning a second language, but for our child, it will be their mother tongue." And I really loved that. And so what I learned was how to support children when they're going through their emotions and feelings. And on this particular day, so the book is real life, Ben was just having a day. And when you're upset, you can't express yourself. The front part of your brain just kind of shuts down and you don't have a language. So I looked at him, and he was, little 3-year-old, but his feelings were bigger than him. And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, Ben, you have big feelings in a little body." And I handed him a piece of paper and pencil. I said, "Here's a piece of paper and pencil. Why don't you show me how you're feeling?" I'm thinking he might draw a picture. He might, I don't know what, but ends up he just stabs at this paper. He's just stabbing at it and getting his feelings out. And I just kept handing him paper. And I just kept saying to him, I said, "Oh, wow, you're just showing me some really big feelings." So I just held space for him. I didn't ask him, "Why are you mad?" or "What are you doing?" or what. I just held space, and I just kept handing him paper after paper after paper. And in the book, you see there's like a mountain of crumpled paper. And I just said, "Wow, look at all these angry feelings. Let's get a let's get a big garbage bag and throw away all these angry feelings." So we did that, threw away the angry feelings. And you could see his face, he started to feel better. And I just said to him, I said, "Wow, you had big feelings in a little body." And he never was able to actually, I never knew why he was upset.
Mhm.
It didn't really matter. I just gave him space and room to express himself. There's an expression, you have to let the bad feelings out before you can let the good feelings in. And so that's the journey that we take on this book. And I had wanted to write it for years and years. And I wanted it to be from the lens of, I feel like parents, who has time to read a whole parenting book? It's difficult, but people read to their children. And so I wanted the language embedded in the story, how to respond to these big feelings. Because it's hard for parents when their child is having a meltdown. They're not only watching their child melt down, but they're also watching a version of themselves as a
Mhm.
child that maybe wasn't allowed to melt down. How were you? What was the response to you as a child? Were you shamed? Were you shut down? So it's very triggering for parents how to respond when our kids have those big moments. So the language is embedded how to respond to those feelings, and for children to see themselves in the book and not feel shame or guilt for having these big feelings. And
Ab-
that's the origin of that story.
Absolutely. There's so much wisdom in this. And I mean, it's hard for me to believe that you had that kind of wisdom. Not that you had that kind of wisdom, but that I didn't have that kind of wisdom. So I'm curious as to where you pulled that from. Like when you decided to hand him that piece of paper for him to express his feelings, where did
I
that come from? Like, was that inspired in that moment, or did you see that somewhere?
I think because I had been learning about validating feelings through my parenting classes that I was taking, that it was important to just validate the feelings of the child, not talk them out of it, not fix it, just validate how they feel. And yeah, I just had that kind of thought of like, here's a piece of paper and pencil. I don't know, it was just kind of inspired in that moment. I mean, I could have given him some Play-Doh
Hmm.
or anything. I just thought that was kind of the only thing that kind of was available, I guess, in that moment. And we just went with it. I just thought, let him find an outlet for that, for those feelings.
Yeah, those moments are so amazing when you're clear or you're grounded, you're present to what is happening instead of reacting to it. And I know, I mean, reading that book, I just know so many parents could benefit. Like you're inspiring, children, but it's also really inspiring parents to not shame themselves for their reactions and to find a better way. And I
Yeah.
know, so you already pointed to it, but that part in the story where um, you tell Ben why he was mad, like, or the parent doesn't know why he was mad at the end, and that's okay. That for me was something I so struggled with. So important that you name that in the book, because I thought the why was important because we want to help our children go through what it is they're going through. And there's this feeling of if we don't know why, then how can we help them? But that kind of removes the pressure, not knowing why. Just it's okay not to know why.
I guess when Ben moved through his feelings, we didn't need to debrief it. You
Hmm.
know, what happened there. He felt better and like, okay, he feels better. Why do we need to like rehash it? Obviously, there are times when we do need to know the why, but generally, when the child is calm, then they will share that. And I just like the idea of like, and it's okay. Like that's kind of my
Yes,
tagline in all my books. It's like, big feelings, a little body, and that's okay.
yes.
And
I love that. I mean, I resonated with that when I like, I could feel that and it's okay. Um, it's so insightful again for like just to remove the pressure off children and parents. Often children don't have the words, like they can't name it, right? We're just feeling this intensity in our bodies and we can't name it. And I think parents, adults go through that too. So just that
absolutely,
it's okay. It's
it's
beautiful.
okay. When we are going through something, even with our significant other, and we're upset, and someone's wanting to be helpful, it comes from a good place, but it's like, why are you upset? Or then they want to fix it, they want to offer you advice. And that's not what you need in that moment. You just want to be heard.
Hmm.
You can solve your own problem. One of the things I, did with my kids is when they were struggling with something, I would say, I would acknowledge it first. It's like, okay, I can see you're really struggling with this. Is it hard for you? I said, or I'd say, how do you want to handle it? Because
Hmm.
that message says, I have faith in you. I have
Yeah.
trust in you that you have the skills. I say, how do you want to handle it? I said, or do you need my help with this? So instead of jumping in right away with, oh, we'd have you tried this or we could do that, I hold back a bit and just say, how do you want to handle this? And it just plants the seed of, oh, I have the capability to do
Yes.
this.
Absolutely. Never do for someone what they can do for themselves because you're
Exactly.
taking away that inner knowing that you are capable, keeps you dependent.
The follow up to that is I'm excited to hear how you handle this.
Yes, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
And in your experience, what's the danger of ignoring or minimizing when children have these experiences?
When we acknowledge and validate a child's experience, we're telling them, number one, that their feelings are okay and that they're okay and that they can trust themselves. So to take that away, what's the opposite? That they're not okay, that they can't feel good about themselves, and
Mhm.
that they don't trust themselves. We inadvertently kind of erode some of that sense of self in funny little ways, like if a child says, I'm not cold, it's the dead of winter. And they're like, I'm not cold. Because when they leave the house, their body temperature hasn't dropped yet.
Mhm.
I'm not cold. Of course you're cold. It's winter. I'm not cold. Okay, well, it's cold for me, but I have your coat. So when your body does feel cold, just let me know and we can put on your coat. And if the child says, oh yeah, I'm cold now, you don't say, oh, I told you so. You say, oh, okay. Because they're listening to their body cues. Those are instinctual things. And when we override it, we're inadvertently telling kids, don't listen to your inner voice. Don't listen to your instincts. When they have emotions and feelings and we discount them, we're saying these don't have value or they're not important. We all know the long-term repercussion of that
Mhm.
is this kind of eroded self-confidence and second guessing ourselves. So why don't we just start at the beginning and build a nice foundation when we have the opportunity?
Yes. And that's so beautiful. And often those voices are like our parents' voices or, our caretakers' voices that we heard. So it's automatic. What do you recommend for parents? Obviously, you're writing books, which is amazing, but what would you recommend for parents when they are in that instinctual learn, like that's what was modeled to them? Usually we notice it. Like I know I've said things and it's like I've become my father. Like those are my father's words. Like, oh my, like when we're in that moment, what would you suggest to parents?
It's a learned thing, but emotional intelligence is really important. I've been there too, where I'm triggered and respond right away. One of the most important things too. So if you can in the moment, take a breath. It's funny when my kids were little, I had a gate, a baby gate that separated the kitchen from the kind of living room, dining room. And people thought, oh, that's so smart because like it's safe, like, creating safety. And they didn't know is that that was my safe. I would go there if I needed to calm my body
Oh, wow.
because as a young mom without a lot of knowledge, I felt I had a lot of rage. I had a lot of rage in me, and I didn't know that that existed, but it was from my child of just repression. And I felt like I'm going to hurt my kid. I am really scared. And I'd put myself in the kitchen with the kitty gate so that I wouldn't do it.
Wow.
And I had to calm my body. And it wasn't until I learned about the parenting skills and trained and so on that I was able to be more self regulated. So, calming our body. And if I did or said something that I regretted, I repair is really, really important. How we repair and making sure we repair. And I would say, you know what? I don't like how I handled that. I could have done that better. I don't like that I yelled at you. I feel bad about that. I'm sorry. And I'd like to try again. And we're modeling that we're not perfect, that we're going to mess up, and that it's okay to try again. My daughter would say, can we rewind? If
That's so
she did something
beautiful.
and she felt bad about it, she's like, can we rewind? And then we would kind of joke and we would go, like as though we were fast rewinding. So I do practice a form of mindfulness, sort of, where, the breathing and calming my body and stuff. But in the moment, you can't always access that,
Yes.
you
That's so
know?
powerful. And I'm so glad you shared that. I had that experience as well. And part of me wondered if it's sort of lineage, things that we're carrying, that all this anger comes out. Um,
Yeah.
I had the same experience. I didn't know the depths of my rage, like just how
Yeah.
how much I was carrying. Like I had never. realized. And and I knew like it came from my mom, but obviously it was like it felt so much deeper. Like it was so much more than what I'd witnessed in her. So it's like, what on earth is happening? So I'm so glad you're naming that. And I'm so glad that you're writing these books to help us understand that this is normal and there are ways to navigate it. And I love that you just suggest that's an improv, the rewind, like the idea that you can always start again is so important, right? We make mistakes, and every single moment you get to say, you know what, I'm going to redo this one. I'm going to try again. That is so
Yeah.
powerful, and I'm so glad your daughter was into that game.
When we lead with some humor, it does help.
Yes.
And, there, when you're tired as a parent, if you're exhausted, and that's not just parents, I see it in the early childhood education field, I see it in daycares, I see it in schools, snippy, impatience and so on. And, we're human and we can't always do the right thing, but when we have the right tools and something that I just say to parents and caregivers, I'm giving you tools for your toolkit so
Hmm.
that when you need something to grab, you have some ideas to access. And just taking a moment. Also, now, not now, but when the kids were little, or when I train to teach people, I say to them, let's breathe together. So with their child, I'd be like, I need, Molly, I need to calm my body.
Hmm.
I I'm feeling like I'm getting upset, and I need to calm my body.
Yes.
So you could just say those words. It's not okay to say to kids, you're making me really mad,
Yes.
or like giving them guilt, because of them. They're, that they carry this sort of guilt that, oh, you're making me mad, or the other one that I see, which is kind of interesting, is not talked about, is when we make kids responsible for our emotions. So, like, oh, you're making mommy, oh, I'm feeling really sad because you're doing this. And I understand where it comes from, but if you really unpack it, it's it's putting guilt on kids, making them responsible for your emotions. And children should not be parentified. They don't need to be responsible for
Hmm.
our emotions. Children are still just figuring out how to deal with their own emotions. So if they're doing something that you don't like, or it does make you sad to see them doing it, maybe they're being mean to their sibling or something, just comment on what's going on, not how it impacts you. It's like, hey, I see you guys are having a struggle here, or can you work this out on your own, or do you need my help? Parents sometimes think if I say, oh, I'm feeling sad, that the child will be like, oh, I don't want to make my parents sad. Well, what's the offshoot of that? Are you gonna lose parental love? Are you gonna, is my safety now in jeopardy because I'm making my parents sad? Or you're making me angry? Oh, my making my parent angry. But when a child is emotionally not regulated, which they shouldn't be, there's children. Now they're on top of them struggling with their emotions. Now they have to worry about, I'm going to lose safety, and I'm going to lose love from the person that I need my to feel safe with.
And there's something really powerful about your books for children to see themselves reflected in the story. So, what is it that you hope that children feel when they're recognizing themselves in Ben or in what Ben is going through?
I read the book a lot to children in school. So I've got like a big group of kids. And, I hold up the book and I say, how do you think Ben is feeling? And they're like, mad, he's mad. And I say, is it okay to be mad? And it's interesting because you sort of see them hold back a little bit, like, what's the right answer?
Mm,
I said, is it okay to be mad? And then some of them are like, no. And I'm like, actually, it's okay to be mad. Our feelings are our feelings. I said, is it okay to hit somebody if we're mad? They're like, no. And I was like, yeah, we don't want to hurt anybody, but it's okay to be mad. Our feelings are our
that's
feelings. And
beautiful.
so that is the message, that our feelings are our feelings. We're allowed to have our feelings. We're not, it's not okay to hurt somebody else because we're having big feelings. And so that's why in the book I say you can hit a pillow, you can jump up and down. So I'm not naming it, but that's self-regulation. And then I say, or the parent or caregiver, grown up, can jump up and down with you and hit a pillow with you. And that's co-regulation.
That's beautiful. Did you think in the writing process that you were also educating parents, or were you more concerned with children?
No, that the lens to give parents the language was there. I wanted to make sure that while they read the book, it educated the caregiver of
Yes,
language to use in those moments. And that was intentional.
I totally see that perspective because I do think parents need the education more than the children. Like, as in, children know how to handle their emotions already, as in, like the jumping up and down, the punching a pillow. I think that is in children already, but we try to take it out of them because we don't know how to deal with those emotions. So when someone is writing, it's okay to punch a pillow. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to jump up and down. It gives permission for the children to be children and for the
Yeah.
parents to hold that space that this is perfectly normal. So beautiful. Did
Thank you.
did writing this book change any of the way that you see emotions, either in children or in parents or in yourself?
I don't think only because the idea for the book originated when my son was around 3. He's now 44. So it's been a
Wow.
dream that I've wanted
Mm.
to do for a very, very long time. The same with the first book, which I published, which was The Magic Pea and Other Surprises,
Yes.
which was when I was toilet training. Or we say it toilet learning now, but at the time my daughter was learning to use the potty. She was 2. And I'd already been doing the parenting work with Ben when he was 3. So when Rebecca came along, she was 2. And she was standing in a little puddle of pee and she looked mortified. And the word accident seemed really strange to me. And I was already learning about children's feelings and emotions. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, you had a surprise pee." And she's like, "What's that?" And I said, "You weren't expecting it. It was a surprise." And then the magic pee came about. It was like, "We're going out. Do you want to try and have a pee?" "Oh, I don't need to have a pee." And I said, "Well, you know what? Have you had a magic pee?" And she's like, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, you try, you sit down in the potty and you think you don't have to go pee, but sometimes you do, and that's a magic pee." And I have been using the magic pee, surprise pee for years and years because Becca's now just turned 41. And I just didn't know how to go about publishing a book. I didn't want to give away my intellectual property. I have to send out everything to a publisher and I just hear nothing. I would go into a vacuum. So I finally published my books in the last year and a half. So I've been a long time percolating these concepts and teaching them. So the only thing that came about with the book was just I was so excited to finally share the message that I wanted to share all these years.
So how did that message stay alive? So there's a 30 to 40-year gap in there that you had these experiences to putting
I,
them in books. Like what kept that vision alive that this was necessary?
in my work, just in my work, I work I worked in the childcare field as a childcare worker, like in a hands-on. But then most of my career has been either working in the school system or as a consultant for children's mental health agencies. So consulting to schools and daycares. So I would just use that language
Hmm.
and keep teaching it. I just kept teaching it to the people that I worked with and kind of spreading the word. I
Yeah.
have a friend who was working in uh, private school. She was using the magic P and surprise P in her work from, it was out there. And I would say, "Oh gosh, don't share it too much because I haven't written my book and I don't want to give away all my secrets. So I kept it alive just through my work and then
Okay.
was finally able to
Well, I'm so glad that your work
down in
kept that
writing.
alive. Yes. So many people don't realize that writing a book can be an emotional healing journey for the author as well. Did you
Yeah.
find that writing this book awakened or healed something in you?
First of all, just the fact that I was able to fulfill a dream was really exciting and to share that. And then realizing, like, oh, I can do this. I didn't think I could do this. And then I wrote another one, and then I wrote another one.
Hmm.
And people kept saying to me, you have to write your own book, like write your story. And I kept thinking, oh, what do I have to say that's new or different? And so I recently came to that place of I am going to write my book. I nobody has my stories. I mean, if we all went to the Alfred Adler Institute and took these beautiful parenting classes, we'd all have the same foundation and framework, but we'd all have different stories
Yes.
to share. And there's
Different
room for all of
perspective.
us. So it's awakened this desire to share my story and also awakened my confidence
Hmm.
and feeling like I do have something important to share and I do have something of value, and that this is an important creative process for me because I really was not parented as a child. And the parenting I got just created a lot of shame and guilt and, self doubt. And so breaking that generational pattern was not, I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but I see it in hindsight. 2 years after I was doing the parenting training and learning, so now Ben is 5. So I've been using this language now, validating feelings and so on. So Ben is now 5, and I'm taking him to kindergarten, and we pick up his little friend in the car. I'm driving. Ben's in the back seat with his little friend. His little friend gets in the car. He's really upset. I hate Gabriel. He broke my transformer. And Ben says to him, he's 5, okay? He says, oh, that must be hard when your little brother breaks your stuff. And his little friend goes like this. Yeah. And makes me cry. Tears were rolling down my cheek, and I'm driving my car, and like, my child has empathy. But that didn't happen by accident. That was 2 years of me using this language. And it was now his mother tongue. It wasn't my mother tongue. I had to always do that translation in my head. Oh, you're fine. Why? Get
Yes.
up. Don't cry. I had to do the translate. Oh, I see you're upset. But for my child, it was his mother tongue. I saw the generational shift.
Hmm. And that's what happens in sharing our stories. That's why you need to share your story, even though other people have written about it. There's all the information out there. It's not about the information, it's about that story because we learn best through stories, not through distilled information, through experience, through
Exactly.
feeling like it's our experience because we're reading, we're following somebody else's story, and then we
Exactly.
internalize it. It's so amazing. And then you alluded to, so there's this long gap between wanting to write these stories, knowing they have value, and actually writing them. And then how that first one gave you the empowerment to then keep writing the other stories. So I want you to talk to that moment when you had that first book. What did that moment mean to you?
So fulfilling. And the fact that I did it, like I was shocked that I actually was able to do it. I was like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to do another one. You know, Recognizing that a lifelong dream, you can do it.
Yes.
When you think you don't know how or that you can't, you can.
Yes.
You can.
So, looking ahead, what are you hoping your books give to other families who read them?
Oh gosh, I really my desire is that we raise children who are allowed to express their feelings without shaming them, without them having guilt. And I really would like my books to be in the schools, in the kindergartens,
Mm,
and in all the daycares, because being in both those environments, I see some of the qualities of the books that are there, and I'm like, oh, I don't really like the messages. It's just not. When I read the books to the kids, they're so cute because they're like, again, like they want me to read it again. And we know that that's why children like songs repeated over and over, because those neurotransmitters in the brain, that's how we really build
mhm.
those strong connections. So when we read those books over and over and over again, like the parents like, oh my gosh, they want me to read that book over and over. It's important to that child.
Right.
Those messages are being embedded. And I would love parents to come away with language and children to come away with feeling okay, because big feelings are okay.
Big feelings are okay. So true. So, lastly, if a parent listening in right now felt overwhelmed by their child's feeling, what would be the message that you'd want to leave them with?
That's okay. That it's okay as a parent to feel overwhelmed with your kids' big feelings. And it's always good to like do a little bit of self-reflection. It's like that's why I say, when your child's melting down, they're not just melting down in front of you, but a version of yourself is
Mhm.
there. And how are your feelings received? I know as a child, I was allowed to have happy feelings, the good feelings. I wasn't allowed to have, negative feelings. And so we become people pleasers. We become, we hold all that stuff down. And so to say to parents, it's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay to feel what you're feeling, but you are the leader. Your child is looking to you for guidance. And so, if we can't be regulated, how do we expect our children to be regulated? Our kids are just going to mirror
Mhm.
us. We're falling apart. Like, who's looking after the kids? But I want parents to know not to feel guilty about how they feel too, that we're all on this learning journey. Who gives us these life skills? We don't get these life skills.
Yeah,
So it's important to me. I really want to be able to go into the high schools and talk to kids before they get to that parenting journey.
absolutely. And you hinted twice during our conversation, actually, how the what the children are reflecting is often like part of us, like it's part of our emotions. And I have two daughters, and I do notice my younger daughter for me is like a chance to reparent myself. Like it's like the way that she is, the way that she, acts or reacts is like me, right? And it's like a way for me to notice and go back to how I handled my relationship with myself. Have you seen that in your work? That
It's
more
yes, it's well,
reflection?
it's it's so interesting, it's so multi-layered, and I love
Mhm.
what you just shared. And first off, with birth order, I always say it's like a job position. So if the first child is responsible and studious and reliable, that position has been filled. So
Mhm.
the next child that comes along has to have a different job position that's available. So they may be more arty or sporty or more social, or just they're going to
Oh,
have a different
wow.
personality because they need to have their own sense of identity. And not that you were comparing or anything like that, but I have parents who sometimes compare, like, this one, why are they so different? I said, because they need to be different. They need to have their own identity. So don't compare children. Like, don't be like, oh, why can't you be like your sister, that kind of thing. I said, because number one, it builds animosity and between the siblings, but
Uh-huh.
also they need to have their own, carve out their own identity. And the other interesting thing that I heard, which I really loved, was Gabor Mate saying that a child gets a different version of their parent. So the parent that you are with your first child is going to be very different than the parent you are with your second child. And that might be, number one, more experience, but also, where are you in your life
Uh-huh.
growth as a person? Where are you in your relationship with your partner? So your child is always going to get each child gets a different version of you. So the the things in us that are unresolved we're going to see in different children, and that can be triggering. And I just was so excited about not dimming their light.
That's beautiful.
And teenage girls. So I have one son, and then I had three daughters, and then I also raised a stepdaughter. But my three daughters at teenage years were really challenging. They were lovely and beautiful and warm and sweet and everything, but they really butted heads with me because that's developmentally appropriate. And so I would observe it and I'd mumble under my breath, crazy psycho child. But I didn't want to dim their light. I
Yeah.
wanted them to be their big, powerful, gorgeous women, to be selves.
Yes.
And but it was hard. It was hard. And that they would sometimes be belittling to me because they knew everything. They
Yeah.
think they know everything. And I just was quiet because, like, this is part of your evolution. This is a developmentally appropriate stage. And one by one, without fail, I would get a phone call from my daughters at some point, usually around the age of 20. Mommy, I'm so sorry. And I go,
Wow.
what, why are you sorry? "Oh, the way I treated you, I thought I knew everything. I didn't know everything. You knew everything. And here's a little tip, particularly with teenagers, but with any children. If your kid is having a meltdown, if they're being rude to you or whatever, if you get really upset with them, then they can be upset with you instead of reflecting back. They can just project, like, if so. I'm trying to explain this well. Okay, it was teenage has a big meltdown with you, and you get really upset. It's like, that is rude, and I don't like that. And well, then they just get their back up, and they're just, all that anger and everything is directed at you. Oh, I'm just so mad that my mother doesn't understand. I'm so mad at her. But when you're calm, and don't overreact, and you be like, okay, like, you just don't overreact to that big emotion. Then what happens is that they sit with it and they reflect and go, oh, I don't think I like how I just treated my mother. And then they come back, they're like, Mommy, I'm sorry for how I spoke to you. So the shift is not giving them a reason to be angry with you so that they can self reflect and take responsibility for their feelings. But when we give them a reason to be angry with us, then they don't have to self reflect. They can just be angry with us.
Wow.
So it's a little bit of fine tuning, but it's an
Yes.
interesting shift. So, and I would just say, you're allowed to have your feelings. I see you're angry. I'm just going to step away right now so that we don't escalate here. Because what I really want to say is, I don't like being spoken to this way. This is not okay. But I don't do it in that moment, not in the heat, not
Wow.
in the heat of the moment, not in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. And that so weaves into writing. Like for me, my experience of writing, like you just pointed to there, how you're not supposed to spoon feed the reader, right? Like you're supposed to let them have their experience. And it's the same with, with your children, with your relationships, is what you're pointing to now, is like, by reflecting or voicing your feelings or whatever is going on in your world, you're spoon feeding them instead of letting them have their experience and sitting with it because it's so much more powerful when they are allowed their experience.
100%. And I don't want them, it's not like, oh, I want her to feel really guilty. I just want her
No, no.
to, to, I want them to self reflect.
Yes, it's the way we
And
started. How don't do for someone else what they can do for themselves. And when
exactly,
you're angry, when you're reflecting, telling them how they should behave, you're doing for them something that they need to do for themselves. So
exactly.
great,
And
perfect.
a quick story is that when Ben was 6, he was mad at me. And I said to him, let's both cool off and then we come together. And he's quiet. And he went upstairs, and I was suspicious. So it was too quiet. So I go and look at the stairs. He's sitting on the stairs and he throws a note to me. So at this point, he's 6. He's just learning to write. He throws me a note, which I thought was interesting. I read the note, and the spelling's incorrect, but what he's trying to say is it says, Moom, I hate you. So, Mom, I hate you. And then he spelt the F word perfectly. And I said to him, Oh, I see you chose to write me a note to tell me how you're feeling. Because he's got this little smirk on his face. He doesn't know what kind of reaction he's going to get from me. I said, I see you chose to write me a note. I said, That's actually very mature of you to write down your feelings. Would you like me to read the note to you? And he's like, Okay. So I read it to him the way he wants me to, which is, Mom, I hate you. And I said, Okay, you're telling me you have some really strong feelings and that you're angry. And I said, I see you wrote another word, and I don't say what it is. I said, I see you wrote another word to tell me you're angry. And maybe you hear the teenagers use that word on the bus or something. I said, but what they don't know is there's a lot more intelligent words that you can use. Like, I'm really frustrated. I'm really disappointed. I'm really angry. And I said, I'm really impressed that you were angry and chose to write me a note to tell me how you felt. I said, Do you want me to read you the note the way you wrote it? And he's like, Okay. And I said, Moom, I hat you. And he started to laugh. And he said to me, Can we put the note up on the fridge? Can we show the note to grandma? And I said, Well, you know what? Maybe we'll make it special between us. And the theory behind this is that had I had a big reaction to I hate you or to the
Mhm.
F word, I would have get a lot of heat and attention to the negative.
Mhm.
Instead, I recognized that within his 6-year-old space, he had a limited language. I hate you just meant I'm really angry. It didn't mean I hate you. Like I
Yeah.
could have reacted like, that's a terrible thing to say. Of course you don't hate me. That's not a nice thing to say. But I didn't go there. I just said, Oh, you had big feelings. Thank you for sharing how you felt. I never heard I hate you again. The swearing was never an issue. And so I always say to parents, be careful where you put your energy. If you're putting it
Mhm.
where the negative is, now you've kind of rewarded the negative. So watch where you put your energy.
And that reminds me of an experience because I know I was upset with my parents and voiced it, and I remember their reaction was so out of proportion. And I knew it's like if I was six, I don't know the age I was, but it's like I knew like as a 6 year old or an 8 year old, like it was young, that hey, I'm just a kid. Like I had that awareness of, hey, like what on earth, right? And that still lives with me today, so when my children act out and are upset with me, that they're just children expressing their feelings or, whatever they're going through, their experience. Because I think children, like doing, we're in the moment, like we're so present in the moment. And I'm sure like when parents blow up or whatever that they do, like me, um, you get this experience of like, whoa, like I'm just 6 years old. What is going on?
Exactly. Exactly. We didn't talk about safety, that your parents are your safety. That's your safety. And so when a kid is holding their stuff together all day long and they come home and they kind of melt down, it's because you're their safe place. You
Mhm.
know, they can show you their worst side and know that you still are okay with them and that you love them. So if they can't show you that, they have to stuff it down and mask it. That's not good for them. They need I'll say to parents when they're really showing you all their colors, it means they feel safe with you. You're their safe place. Yes, it's not, maybe you don't love all those colors, but they need to be expressed. And that's why I say you have to let the bad feelings out to let the good feelings in. You can't stuff feelings down. And the analogy I give is the beach ball. Trying to push a beach ball
Mhm.
underwater takes so much effort, and eventually it ricochets out of control. And so we want to give opportunity to be able to express, and um, we don't always have to know why. So just that safety piece, like remembering, oh, I'm their safe place. So if my kid is having a meltdown and then I'm having a meltdown, like where's the safe place? And
Mhm.
the other thing too is that rage and that anger and that wanting to act out are primal. It is primal. And it takes a lot of effort to not do that. And that's
Mhm.
why I say create safe spaces, have a pillow, just model, because you otherwise you're breaking that bond with that child that you are their safe place. And
Absolutely.
there's always repair. There's always repair. I did spank my son, when before I knew about the parenting stuff because I was frustrated. And so there's always repair. It's like that's not okay. But I'm human and I don't want to pretend like I
Mhm.
didn't have those moments because I did.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing, Bethelene. Where is the best place for people to find you?
My parentingbyheart.com website, there's links to reach out.
Yeah,
And then also you can see my videos. So I talk about all these topics that we've talked about. My books are on Amazon, on Indigo Online and places like that as well, because I know not everybody wants to buy off Amazon. Or you can reach out to me privately and I can send you books independently as well.
great. I'm going to have all those links in the show notes so
Okay.
people can check in there. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And thank you, Bethelene, for joining me and having this amazing conversation.
Thank you so much for having me and for your really thoughtful questions. Really appreciate that.